Hello everyone, welcome to the ProChara Splatoon 3 experimental card. Basically, the idea with this is something the devs could actually do, which is obviously Splatoon 3 is going to have a good amount of balance changes from 2 to try to see how things are going to work in a different game, and we might see some tweaks to main weapons. So this would be its own separate little mode that they could put in Splatoon 2 as soon as they want to, where the general player base can test out a bunch of different changes to main subs and specials that the devs are thinking of putting in Splatoon 3. Kind of similar to what Overwatch does with Experimental, which is the patch notes go into their own mode for a little bit and people test it. And Overwatch also recently had one that was decided by the creators, and it's a ton of fun. I made my own list of changes, and this isn't just your standard patch. These are all drastic, so nothing in here is small. And I have two goals with these changes. Add a good bit more depth, so try and add more options to it. Think like Swiffer being able to charge full speed in the air, or Junior having a larger ink tank. And secondly, interaction. Basically, what we add should be things that there's a response to, aka not splash wall versus half the things in the game. So real quick, I'm going to start with global changes. So this would affect literally every weapon in the game. I won't waste much time on this. Every weapon can paint their own feet, meaning if you shoot forward ahead of you, the shots will ink at your feet. It's a pretty standard thing. They buffed it for a ton of main weapons, and a ton of other main weapons have the problem with it. So that's out of the way. No body blocking your teammates' shots. You can now shoot through your teammates. This mainly screws over Splatlings, but it's a common thing for any weapon class. So like chargers, you'll be able to shoot through your teammates. And then number 3, we're going to assume main power-up returns in Splatoon 3 because it's a good idea, but damage up is removed because damage up is a bad idea. I'm only going to test alternate effects for a few weapons. So with that all being said, let's get into it. Alright, let's start with Aerospray. So Aerospray will have 10% less paint when jumping, 3% less paint when grounding, so we're nerfing its paint right off the bat pretty drastically. However, as you can read, we are going to completely remove any RNG the weapon has in the air, and we're also going to be giving it its old damage back. There's a few reverts in this patch, which is basically, this was a thing in Splatoon 1, Aerospray did 24.5, and they nerfed it down, so yes, we're changing it. So, what does this mean? Aerospray is supposed to be like a more special junior. In Splatoon 1, Aerospray was literally an unlockable single-player weapon. That's why people were so obsessed with it. And it's the only 5-shot in the game. But this thing is way too similar to Junior right now. And Junior got to be distinct. They got its larger ink tank. So we're giving Aerospray a combat mode. Basically, jumping is going to be reliable, and when you jump, you can laser people like a splash. Or if you just are in the air in general. So we're nerfing its paint a little bit to compensate for that, especially when you jump, since jumping is not a fighting mode. However, Aerospray right now has really good moving around, like main strafing, and if you commit to a jump to get rid of that RNG, you no longer have this main strafing capabilities, because you're committing to a jump to get the laser capabilities. So whether you want to fight in jumping, or fight in terms of staying on the ground is actually pretty unique. Splattershot Pro. Fire rate increased from 8 to 7 frames between shots. So basically, Pro shoots 1 frame faster in between every single shot. So its kill time gets reduced a bit, its fire rate is of course buffed, and it means it paints a little bit better. It does also mean the weapon's technically a little bit more ink hungry. Pro uses 2% of its ink tank for each shot, and because you're firing faster, you will run out of ink faster. But this means that Pro overall will have a little bit of a faster kill time, so it'll be more than just 1 frame better than Squeezer. And that'll make it fairly distinct. We're also going to be buffing its strafe speed slightly, making it a little bit faster so it can space a bit easier, keep at that mid-range, so from 0.55 to 0.6 units per frame, so Pro will be a little bit quicker. And then the MPU change I want to do with Pro is specifically painting range. So right now, Squeezer, which again, very similar but much better weapon, has a painting mode that paints well near it. But increasing the painting range would mean that Pro paints better further away, like at the maximum of your range. Pro really struggles to match up with Squeezer and is dependent on an MPU 2-shot right now, but when we buff it, we still want to keep it fairly simple. Splattershots are supposed to be an introduction to that specific weapon range. Brella and Tensabrella. This was something that someone said in my YouTube comments. If you know who you are, you can please point yourself out. Like a while back, I don't remember, which is the idea that if Tenebrella launches its shield, it should go from heavy to medium class. And I actually really like this idea for Brellas. And I wanted to do this with the regular Brella as well, because Reg Brella never really wants to launch its shield. And it still probably won't with this change, but now it might actually want to occasionally, and it would also make Brella a little bit better at fighting without the shield, which, considering that Brella and Tent have both gotten damage nerfs, I think a little bit of extra help fighting without a shield is more than fair. So, medium to light class adds 2 subs of swim and 2 subs of run speed, but for Tenebrella, this is adding 4 subs of swim and 4 subs of run speed, because Tent is a heavy class weapon. And this might be very extreme with Tent. Admittedly, Tent launches its shield all the time, which means Tent half the time is going to be a light class weapon. But I think that could still be pretty cool, honestly. And I think it's a nice idea to do. And it adds a lot to Brella's shield launch. It gives it its own thing. But what about Undercover? Have I abandoned it? No, I haven't abandoned it. So the larger shield size, so you can't get shot above your shield when you jump. The shield's too small to block from specific things. That's pretty simple. But in this case, last time I buffed Undercover Brella for Splatoon 2, for a Splatoon 2 specific patch, I did shield HP. And because this is for Splatoon 3, we're doing damage. So it's going to do 45 damage as a max for its shots, and 20 for a shield damage. Which means 2 shots for a shield should be fairly reliable. And in general, Undercover will have a little bit better damage, which I think is fair, especially with other main weapons becoming better. Undercover's already pretty weak right now, so it's pretty good for it. However, I wanted to give it a little bit of a slap on the wrist, and I wanted to do it a bit creatively. In this case, when you shield, if you hold your shield out for 3 seconds, your strafe speed gets cut in half, so you become half speed shooting around. So why did I do this? 1, Undercover is a bit more prevalent at lower levels of play, so this is a nerf that would mostly affect that area, since we are giving it a good bit of buffs. And 2, Undercover Brella doesn't have a lot of shield HP, and when you drop your shield, and this goes for the same for any Brella, it regens its HP slightly. And this is actually very important for Undercover, especially the higher up you get, because you need to have a bit more HP to stall as long as possible. So this change will actually indirectly teach people to play the weapon better, because you're going to be encouraged to at least drop your shield every few seconds, and when you drop it, you're going to be getting your HP back. So I wanted to make rolling better on rollers. Now listen, rolling, I'm going to be honest with you roller players, once you get to even a high rank power, rolling is trash. It's completely worthless, besides like maybe moving around for carbon or rolling over a baller. Very minor thing. So I wanted to make it a little bit more special. So for the normal roller, the Flingsa roller, and the Dynamo roller, once you get the faster mode, you're also going to gain better damage. Specifically 220 damage, the same as a suction bomb. So if you roll and you pick up speed, the roller should be more powerful, right? It doesn't make sense it only does 125. So it's going to do 220, which means it's going to be insane at dealing any amount of damage to objects, which with the Crab Tank and Big Bubbler Shield, there might already be some in Splatoon 3. Carbon Roller, I had to do something a little bit differently, because Carbon Roller does not have a one-shot like the other 3. So for Carbon Roller, I gave it a 3rd rolling mode. So you roll, you get faster pretty quickly, and then after a second of rolling in your 2nd mode, which will have its damage buff from 70 to 80, you're going to roll even faster, from 1.52 to 1.6 units per frame, and do an insane 90 damage with your roll. So if people are a little bit weak, you can run people over with Carbon, and Carbon will also be pretty damn fast. This is actually really close to Octobrush roll speed, which we'll get to a bit later. So yeah, rolling, still overall useless, but now it's like maybe 1% useful, and rolling gets to be the most powerful thing in the game, because why not? I wanted to do more with Dynamo specifically because Dynamo is really weak right now as a main weapon, and it really loses to bombs. So first thing is the Vertical Flick. Vertical Flick takes like 61 frames, and its weakest hit is a 3-shot. Like, are you kidding me? That's an over 3-second kill time. 3 seconds! And that's assuming they don't heal in between those vertical flicks, which they can absolutely do. So max range Dynamo vertical flicks, unless if it's really comboed with a bunch of other people, have like no pressure. So their minimum damage is going to be 50. That deserves to be a 2-shot. Secondly, we'll put in the Dynamo flick canceling I've talked about quite a few times. So you can cancel your flick by going into squid form, 10 for the horizontal, 15 for the vertical. However, an idea from Fling King is that canceling a flick should cost a bit of your ink tank, which I agree. So canceling Dynamo's flicks will cost 10% of your ink tank. And also, since we buffed Dynamo quite a bit, its ink efficiency will be moved back from 18 to 20 that it was in Splatoon 1. So now, rather than having a little bit of wiggle room in your ink tank, 5 flicks uses your entire ink tank. So I think this makes Dynamo a lot better. It's a little more ink hungry, but I mean, it should be. And now it doesn't auto-lose to bombs. Tri-Slosher is another idea I talked about in the past, which is a 3-shot Tri-Slosher. So here's how I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna be a little differently than I talked about last time, because I made sure I got the math right now. 62 to 42 damage, which means 3 sloshes to kill will do 126, compared to the 2 sloshes to kill of right now doing 124. However, the outside 2 hits of Tri-Slosher will now be their own hitbox, that instead of doing 42, will do 35 damage, which means it will still be a 3-shot with the indirect hits. But if you're on a tiny bit of high ground, sloshing down on people, and you hit the outside hitbox, it's going to be a 4-shot. So aim is actually somewhat needed in a little bit of situations. Finally, we're going to be nerfing its paint by about 5% because we're increasing the fire rate, so the kill time's only 1 frame slower. So Tri-Slosher will actually kill in about the same amount of time that it does right now, literal 1 frame slower, which I think is fair. However, it's a 3-shot, so now Tri is a lot more ink hungry, it rewards aim more, and it's more versatile because it actually can paint the map now with the faster fire rate. So now Tri can be played a lot more differently. If you want to play more of a supportive Tri, depending on the kits it has, it's completely possible. And Tri is a bit more skill dependent. So I think it's a good idea, and I kind of want Tri to be a bit more distinct from Reg Bucket. So in my opinion, I think a 3-shot Tri-Slosher could be very cool for the game. Blob's another one I won't waste too much time on because I've talked about it before, which is basically Blob but you can't spam. So after the first 3 sloshes, your ink consumption will increase over time up to triple of what it is right now. And that will reset after 1.5 seconds of not firing. So now Blob can't spam, basically. It has to be a bit more careful. However, the damage of the blobs will be buffed from 30 to 32, so it'll be a lot better damage to objects. That'll make it a lot easier, and a lot more potential overall for 3 blobs to kill. And before the first bounce, the blobs will travel 10% faster, which will make it a little bit easier to defend yourself at close range if they're near you. If you're good at managing when you fire and you don't AFK, this is a buff. But if you play AFK Blob and only paint, this is absolutely a hard nerf, which is great. In my opinion, Blob is way too easy to get like basic value. Obviously, when you get in a higher level, you need to play a bit more smart. So having it be a lot harder in terms of ink consumption will mean the weapon actually requires a good amount of skill to play, even at lower levels. And Octobrush. So Octobrush, I want to give its damage overlap back. I have to do an entire video on weapon reworks and why Octobrush was done poorly and why dual squelcher to dually squelcher was great. I'll cover that another time. Right now, the brush itself is going to have a hitbox that does 15, which can stack with the normal damage, which, by the way, the normal damage caps at 40. So if you're up close to someone and you hit them with the brush itself, you can do a maximum of 55 damage, giving you a 2-shot up close. Additionally, we're going to make the roll speed a tiny bit faster because I think it's a little bit slow, especially with a lot of other weapons in 2 getting a bit faster with end lag buffs. I think the roll should be a little bit quicker to compensate. And as compensation as well for the 2-shot potential, we'll reduce the range slightly so it'll paint a little bit less far. It'll kill a little bit less far, so you have to get closer to people. So Octobrush will now require you to actually get near people and reward people for getting in, which is what the weapon did in the first game, so we're just going back. Bamboo! No funny balance changes. Like, I've come up with a lot of creative ideas. Bamboo's the exception. We're removing MPU damage up, because that's a joke. That's the actual joke. Like, current state of Bamboo, that's the funny. Not what I'm gonna do with it. I'm gonna fix it, because it's a crime how weird of a state this weapon currently is. Damage to objects should be restored to pre-nerf. Basically, when Bamboo got MPU, shortly after they nerfed its damage to objects. So if you had 99.9, it would be the same as your 85 damage to objects. So if MPU is gone, we can restore that. We'll give it back its other nerf. It can have 14 shots out of its gun. And then we'll fix what actually needed to happen, which is its damage curve. So 35 for tap shots instead of 30, and 90 for the max damage. Meaning you can kill people easily with 2 partials, or combo off of a 1-shot a bit easier, and you can 3 tap shot people, which will make it so much more reliable without having to be a 1-shot weapon. You still want 2 shots, but now you actually have to play for those 2 shots. It's just a lot easier. And then MPU will give it a unique effect, which is charging full speed in the air, or not full speed, but faster in the air, which could be up to half of Squiffer's charge speed. This would be something that a few subs of MPU could stack very well with it, so for niche situations where you want to like jump peek over a ledge, it'll give you a little bit faster of a charge and a bit more damage. Dapple Dualies, this one's pretty simple. I don't want to talk about it forever. Give it a third roll. I think Dapples as a main weapon is absolutely... I think the kits also suck, but I think the main weapon of Dapples does suck too. So, third dodge roll, much more utility, much more options, much better at closing the gap, which is what it needs a lot of help with. And then we'll also give it a little bit more painting range. Dapples really struggles when it doesn't have map control because it can't poke whatsoever. So being able to paint a little bit further will help a lot, just in terms of getting your special, or having a way to push back in without being super dependent on a bomb. And then as compensation, we'll nerf the end lag after the 2, or in this case now 3 dodge rolls by just 1 frame. So it's a little bit easier to punish Dapple after 3 dodge rolls. It's like a tiny slap on the wrist just to make up for this. Blasters. First off, the direct should pierce through opponents, just like charger shots. This might already be in Splatoon 3. It's a bit hard to tell, but trailer footage has indicated that it might. So this is probably already in the game. I'm just going to put it there anyway. No jump RNG on any of the blasters. Jump RNG on slow weapons is absolutely a death sentence, and it's crazy how bad it is in this game and how much it's been untuned. However, to make blasters less obnoxious, the blast radius will be reduced by 5% when you jump. This goes for all blasters, so it'll especially hurt stuff like Clash with the larger radius. However, I think this should be able to be mitigated a little bit. So MPU will now allow the blast radius when jumping to be a little bit larger by up to 5%. So if you completely stack MPU, your blast radius when you jump is the same, but you're never going to run that much. So a little bit of MPU might help with your blast radius, but you don't have much room for gear on blasters, so I think this is okay, because blasters like swim speed, they like QR, stuff to space, so you can't really afford much of it. I think it'd be like Rapids right now with MPU, where you'd run like a few subs, help a tiny bit. Alright, sub-weapon time. Fizzy Bomb. This sub-weapon is broken, and it's just not on either a good main weapon or a good special weapon with K-Machine. So, just unfort, that's how it is. Here's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be really harsh with the sub-weapon because I think it deserves it. First, paint decreased by 3% on all explosions. It'll paint slightly less. Still pretty good. Main thing, the outside hitbox will be changed from 35 to 30. So 3 indirects from a Fizzy does not kill. However, if you hit an indirect plus a direct hit, like if the middle of the Fizzy hits someone even once, then the other 2 shots will kill. So Fizzy still can kill with the 3 shot, but more often than not, if it's the very outside of the Fizzy hit, you're going to live on about 10 HP. To compensate, we're going to be making the middle hit of Fizzy do 60 damage, which means it's now going from 150 to 180 because all 3 explode on objects, which means it's going to be great at Rainmaker Shield, it's going to be great against Brellas Shields, and it already insta-breaks Red Brellas Shield. So Fizzy becomes insane against objects, and it's still really good for poking. It still doesn't use much of your ink tank, throw distance, utility, etc. Speaking of utility, Toxic Mist. So, I like the idea of what Fizzy and Torpedo did, of having it be sub-weapons that kind of have multiple uses. So we're going to be doing that with Toxic Mist. So Toxic Mist, first we're going to slap it on the wrist a little bit like we've been doing. It'll be only 5 seconds that it lingers. However, it'll travel 10% faster, so it's easier to throw directly at people. And the reason I want that is because if you hit someone with Toxic Mist, it becomes Disruptor, basically. It becomes Splatoon 1 Disruptor, but it only lasts for 2.5 seconds. I mean, listen, it's a little bit dumb, but I don't think it's as broken, because A, you need a direct hit, and that's really hard to get. And B, it only lasts 2.5 seconds. So it's not like it lasts that long compared to Splatoon Disruptor that lasts about 5 seconds. So I think it's balanced, and it gives Mist a lot more than you can do with it. Autobomb. This change is kind of for auto launcher, but it helps with Autobomb. This is, I guess, more minor, but I kind of like it. So first, if no targets are found, like when you throw Autobomb and it locates, like it scans that area, if it finds no one, it'll get a bit larger, and it'll be 30% larger explosion. So it paints a little bit more, and it's a little bit more threatening. But secondly, if you throw it into an area, and you find multiple people, say you find 3 people, then it's going to glow red, enough to indicate that there's 3 people, and then it's going to travel 5 plus 5, 10% faster toward the nearest target. So it'll walk a tiny bit faster as well. 5% for each target that's in that scan radius. So now you can tell if multiple people are found by one Autobomb. It'll indicate it, and it'll make the Autobomb a little bit more threatening when it does. So you get rewarded for throwing Autobomb in areas with multiple people. Auto Launcher is still bad, but it might not be useless, and Autobomb gets a little bit better. I like it. Okay, I'll be honest. I just thought Curling Bomb bouncing off walls is funny. So every time it bounces off a wall, it'll get 10% bigger. There's no, like, smart change. There's no, like, creative reason for this. It's just, lol. Like, yeah, you bounce it, and it gets bigger. Yay. Ink Mine. So, I want Ink Mine to be throwable. Ink Mine can now be thrown, and not only that, it can stick to walls. Now, you can't throw it as far as bombs, which I think is fair, but you can throw mine and you can throw it on walls. As long as it's inkable, it can stick to it. However, mine is no longer going to locate opponents. I think there's too much wall hack stuff in Splat 2 and even in Splat 1, so I want to get rid of some of it for 3. So instead, you'll get that white silhouette that's very similar if you have Thermal Ink and stuff like that. And that means it'll only indicate it for you, but you can obviously call it out. The main thing we're adding is that you can detonate the sub-weapon button by holding it down for 1 second. I wanted it to be held down because I want it to be somewhat committal to detonate it. And then I also am going to have the trade-off if it detonates both of your mines. You can't trigger just one of them. You trigger both of them at the same time. So you get rid of both of them if you want to insta-detonate them. That gives them a bit more use, a bit more utility. The main thing here I think could be really cool is sticking to walls, honestly. That could even cheese some people, so some map design might need to be tweaked, admittedly, because if it goes off and it paints the wall and then you fall. But I mean, that just means we can't have more towers, and that's just another reason to bring this in the game, honestly. Anyway, alright, Inkstrike first. So, first of all, Inkstrike was a bit weak in 1, and I think in the state of 3 it might still be a little weak. So first we're going to make the strike size slightly bigger by 5%, kind of closer to Booyah Bomb size. But secondly, you can now lock onto any opponent. So basically, it's like picking a super jump. When you open up the Inkstrike map, you can see your opponent's weapons, and one of them will be the up arrow, left arrow, right arrow, and down arrow. You can't see where they are, but instead of picking a location on the map, you can just pick one of them and use it on them, so you can target someone. Way less value than missiles, because it's only on one person, and it's your entire special, and you don't know where they are. So you have to use it on someone and know where they are. If you want to Inkstrike on a clumped group of people, you need to know that. Or someone needs to tell you that. You don't get to know that information for free. So I think that gives it a good bit more depth without being broken, and I think it's 50 times less obnoxious than missiles right now. Alright, Inkjet and Ultra Stamp. These are the two main specials I want in Splatoon 3, and here's how I would tweak them. First off, we're going to be buffing both of these. We'll start with Inkjet, which is the travel speed in the air will be increased by 5%, so it'll be a little bit faster moving around, which is a very big buff for it because that's the main thing that makes it vulnerable. So buffing that even by a little bit is rather drastic. The max damage will be increased from 120 to 150 because it is really bad at dealing damage to objects, and I think it could be a problem it have in Splatoon 3 with stuff like the big bubbler shield. So if Jet exists, it needs to do more damage for its direct hits. We're also going to tweak Special Power-Up. I am getting rid of Special Power-Up increasing blast radius size because I think that just makes it easier instead of encouraging you to get good at it. So instead, we're going to make it shot speed by about 5%, which seems small, and that's because it is. This is a secondary effect. Special Power-Up already increases the duration. So if you want to run like 1.1 Special Power-Up to get your 8th Inkjet shot, you also get a faster traveling shot. So it makes it a little bit easier to hit people, but mostly rewards better players. So you have to actually learn and get good at the special, which Inkjet is a hard special. It should be more difficult. The blast radius is just not a good idea in my opinion. And then the Splatoon 2 specific change, at least hopefully, is it can't be chained any specials. And I think this should be the exact same thing for stuff like Zipcaster, by the way. I think these aggro specials should not be able to be chained any form of HP in Splatoon 3, regardless if there's any type of similar armor special, which I hope there isn't. Ultra Stamp. Stamp size increased by 10%. Like, the stamp is larger. This means the thrown hammer is bigger. The protection hitboxes are bigger, but not the main one-shot damage zone. That is the same, it's just a buff to the outside hitbox that does 40. That's a little bit bigger. There's a bit of some glitchiness going on where if you use Ultra Stamp against someone who's near a wall, the one-shot hitbox will just whiff even when it shouldn't, so that'll fix that. And then we're gonna buff Thrown Stamp a tiny bit. It's gonna be 10% faster in terms of traveling, and it can go up to 3% farther. So Stamp goes a little bit farther, a little bit faster. And I think that gives it a ton more reliability in use. And then like with Jet, it can't be chained any specials. So that, I think, would be a version of Stamp and a version of Inkjet that would be good in Splatoon 3 and even functional in Splatoon 2. as long as it can't be chain stuff. And the last change is the one I posted on Twitter as a preview for this video, which is Booyah Bomb, and I talked about this with Gamer a little bit, which is a team-orientated Booyah Bomb. So, going through the nerfs, Booyah Bomb will lose you 60% of the special if you panic it and die instead of 50. The damage will be from 3.3 to 3.0, so it'll be easier to escape. Booyah Bomb will take 5% increased damage from Brellas, blasters, sloshers, rollers, and chargers. Booyahing for a Booyah Bomb will no longer give you special charge. It barely gives you any anyway. It's like 5 points at most, and everyone else gets less. And Booyahing will now reveal your location slightly more. However, all of that is to compensate that Booyah Bomb will now give you 3 subs of swim speed, 3 subs of run speed, 3 subs of ink resistance, and 3 subs of quick respawn if you Booyah for it. And that quick respawn will activate even if you have a kill. It'll still lower your respawn time. And there should be some form of visual indicator that you got that buff. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this Armor 2.0? No, this doesn't touch your HP. There's still an indicator, so it still has downsides. You have to Booyah for the special, so you have to actually do something to get it. It'll give away your location rather than it auto-chains to people. And it's just movement buffs. Like, this is movement stuff that'll help every weapon, but it's not drastic enough to where it ruins the specific things. One-shots aren't ruined here. If someone gets Booyah and they get the Booyah buff, they still can be just shot by one-shot weapons. They don't get any extra HP. So it's a much smaller and more fair buff. Make it happen. I think the idea of a team-based Booyah Bomb is awesome, and if you ever play a Booyah Bomb weapon, I guarantee you, people are gonna Booyah for you now. They may not before, people might not care, and that sucks because it means you can throw Booyah faster. Now they're gonna Booyah. Every person will be pressing Booyah whenever you activate this thing now. So that's the experimental changes. That's my ideas. These are drastic things. Obviously you want a little bit of testing with them, but I think these are creative. I think they add a good amount of depth to the game, a good amount of options, and I think they work really well in Splatoon 3. I think the idea of testing changes, especially for the third game in 2, is a great way to keep the hype alive. It gives people in Splatoon 2 more to do. It's a great way to allow yourself to actually test more drastic and fun changes. But, you know, that's going to be it. See you all later.